Welcome to Encountering Christ, a podcast about meeting Jesus in the ordinary moments of life, learning how to invite others into those encounters, and exploring practical ways to recognize Christ at work in our daily rhythms. Our prayer is that this time helps you see and share Christ more clearly. This morning we look at the last of 4 arguments for the existence of God. We've looked at the cosmological argument, which is the first cause argument. Secondly, we looked at the teleological argument, which is an argument from everything being created and designed with a purpose. And then third, we looked at the ontological argument, which sees God in our very existence and being. And now today, we take a look at the moral argument. Out of all the arguments for God, this one is being used a lot these days with regards to handling the question of whether or not a man can be good on his own without first an inherent and or universal knowledge of what is good. It begins from man's sense of right and wrong and the need for justice to be done, and argues that there must be a God who is the source of right and wrong and who will someday mete out justice to all people. Now, the first distinction that needs to be made is what is meant by the question, can you be good without God? And of course, we have all seen people who are atheists or non-believers do good things. But that isn't the question. The question isn't, can you be good without believing in God? The question is, can you be good without God? For truly, if there is no God, then there is no basis for something to be either good or bad. If there is no external source or basis or determinative force or judge, then absolute good cannot exist. If there is no God, there can be no real standard for right or wrong. See, if there's no God, then the standard for right and wrong becomes subjective or a simple matter of personal preference, which has no more value than your favorite flavor of ice cream. You may love chocolate and say that chocolate ice cream is good, but I may disagree and have the opinion that chocolate is the worst and bad. Neither of us would be more right or wrong than the other. That is subjective. Now, that doesn't matter much if we're talking about ice cream. But if we're talking about loyalty in a marriage, or murder, or acceptable business practices, or how people should or should not be treated, objective morality, having a universal standard, matters a great deal. The biggest rebuttal to this argument is the idea that humans can get together and create shared morals that benefit mankind. Well, there are 2 problems with that. First, this would require a one-world government, as we have seen. We would have no real justification to go to war against Hitler or a drug lord, as they may have different ideals than us. Second, what one group sees as beneficial for all is often seen as a detriment in the eyes of another group. Without a universal standard, not only do individuals have no real reason to disagree with the actions of another, but groups have no real reason to disagree with other groups. Simply put, and this is easy to see, without a universal standard for right and wrong, the result is always conflict. Of course, if there is no universal right or wrong, then conflict or killing another or defeating another cannot be considered wrong. Perhaps what you're seeing here is that our personal opinions of right and wrong don't stay in our personal bubble. Our personal opinions of right and wrong affect others around us. This is easily seen in our American debates on tariffs and transgender and marriage and personal orientation and so on. Our personal preferences always and ultimately affect others. But instead of spending all of our time refuting false ideas about morality, let's spend our time looking at the goodness of the fact that God is our source for morality. It is an incredible thing. Every human has a sense that there is right and wrong, and every human has a sense that bad behavior can and should be deterred. When the Bible says that God's nature is clearly seen, this is what it is talking about. The nature of God is embedded in us through the image of God, which is provided to the soul of all humans whenever God created us. You see, we inherently know that love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control are good and admirable qualities in the life of a human. And while we may have a choice whether or not to live them in our daily lives, the fact that they are good is plain to see because God has made it plain to see. And God has made it so plain to us that we are without excuse. In other words, we are personally responsible to God regarding our behavior according to His nature, which is planted in us. Now, how do I know all of this? Well, mankind knows all of this, whether it is admitted or not, because God has made it plain to us all. The Bible says it this way: Since what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse. The universal knowledge of God's nature is plain to us because God has made it plain to us. How? Through His image planted within us. And so if I do something that is against the nature of God, I know it, because God makes sure that I know it plainly. And my denial of this knowledge is simply a lie. And my refusal to follow is a rejection of Him. And while I may not acknowledge this rejection or even the existence of God, it does not alter my culpability before Him, because, in short, my soul knows. My soul knows better. I may object with my mind, my will, my actions, my voice, but my soul knows. It is plainly seen, because God has made it plainly seen, so that I am without excuse before Him. See, the Bible also says in John 16:8 that God's Spirit convicts the world of sin, of righteousness, and of judgment. So when I sin, I realize that it is against God's nature, and I am guilty before Him because of it. And so we humans can deny it all we want, but our actions, our laws, our desires, and our pains and failure reveal the truth. We know that there is a universal standard for right and wrong, and we know that God is that standard. And as such, our behavior is judged by Him. So as you go through your day today, consider what is truly right and wrong, not in your eyes, but in God's eyes. And it's an incredible thing that you can actually know the answer to the question. Consider that you already know what that standard is, and that standard of good or bad is according to His good nature. A nature that is full of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Not only do you know this, you also know that He is the one who leads you and empowers you to walk in His good nature. God is right in the thick middle of the way you live your life, and it impacts you greatly. Have a great day.